In this life full of toil for a living, every one of us carries burdens on our shoulders. There are tangible burdens like food, clothing, money, responsibility to family and work at the office. But there are also intangible burdens whose weight sometimes makes us tired. Many times over, it has no form for us to hold, no sound for us to hear, but its influence is extremely terrible. It creeps into every meal, making us eat without tasting the deliciousness it enters. Every sleep, making us sleep without peace. It is present in every conversation, making us smile while our hearts are tangled in 100 knots. That burden, in Buddhism, it is called by many names. Sometimes it is delusion, sometimes it is affliction, but the most familiar name that people often call it is worrying. We worrying about everything, don't we, dear Buddhists? Young people worrying about their future careers, worrying about how not to lag behind their friends, people with families worrying about their children's education, worrying about their aging parents, worrying about whether the husband and wife relationship is harmonious or not, older people worrying about illness, worrying about loneliness, worrying about becoming a burden to their children and grandchildren. Just like that, from this day to another month, we live in an endless chain of worries. Worrying is like a shadow. It just silently follows us from morning to night, from home to the street. The more we try to run away from it, the larger and bolder that shadow seems to become, and then we become exhausted. Not because the work is too much, not because life is too harsh, but precisely because we have consumed too much energy on that invisible shadow. Many people mistakenly believe that worrying is an expression of care, of responsibility. We think that we must worry to truly love our children, must worry to truly be responsible for our work. That is not wrong, but we need to distinguish very clearly between two states. One is planning lo liu, and two is worrying lo lum. Planning is an action of wisdom. It is when we use our clarity to prepare, to arrange, to prevent bad things that might happen. That is a correct, constructive concern. But worrying is a state of a fearful mind. It is when we let our minds draw hundreds and thousands of terrible scenarios that are not real about the future. Then we sink ourselves into those scenarios and suffer and feel tired. The Buddha once taught that the root of all suffering does not lie in external circumstances, but lies within our own minds. If the mind is not at peace, even in a golden palace or jade shrine, it feels like hell. But when the mind is at peace, even in difficult circumstances, we still find peace. Our worrying is just like that. It does not come from the event, but from our thoughts about that event. I would like to tell a very ordinary story so that dear Buddhists can easily visualize. There was a mother. Her son was grown, but that night he came home later than usual. It was past midnight and she still hadn't seen her son return. The phone could not be reached. The mother started to worrying at first. It was just a little restlessness, but then over time, that worrying grew bigger. She started to imagine all sorts of bad things. Did my son have an accident? Or was he lured by bad friends to do something wrong? With every single negative thought that appeared, her heart would tighten music. Her breathing became rapid. Her whole body broke out in a cold sweat. She kept kept walking, in and out, standing and sitting restlessly, her heart like fire. Throughout those few hours, the mother lived in extreme suffering, until she heard the familiar sound of the bike outside the gate. She rushed out and saw her son was safe and sound. It was just that the bike broke down on the road and his phone ran out of battery. At that moment, she sighed in relief. But, dear Buddhists, try to contemplate, was the suffering she just went through real? Very real. That pain, that fear was real, but the cause of it did not come from the sun, because the sun was still safe. Rather, it came from the very delusions, the negative pictures that her mind had painted. Through that story, we see that we are the ones who create burdens for ourselves. We ourselves have imprisoned ourselves in the prison of unreal worries. We suffer for a future that has never happened and are tormented by a past that cannot be changed. We forget the most precious, the most miraculous moment, which is the present moment. The world-honored one taught that a person living in the past is a dead person, a person dreaming of the future is a person not yet born. Only the person dwelling in the present moment is the person who is truly alive. Yet we often choose to be a person not yet born, letting our minds wander in the vague lands of the future, planting there the seeds of fear and insecurity. Recognizing this is the first step and also the most important step on the path of transforming suffering. When we know that the burden we are carrying is created by our own mind, only then can we begin to learn how to put it down. But having recognized it, how do we put that burden down? Gently. How can our minds return to dwell in the present amidst a life that is inherently full of fluctuations? That is what we will explore together in the following parts of today's Dharma talk. Before we continue, if these shared words have any good conditions that touch the thoughts of you, dear Buddhists, I hope you will happily press the channel subscribe button and share a line of comments about your own worries so that we can practice and transform together. I pray that for every comment, every sharing, it is a time you, dear Buddhists, put down a part of your affliction, sowing one more good seed for peace and the soul. Namo Buddha. So, dear Buddhists, after having recognized that the burden of worrying is created by our own minds, the next question that surely everyone wonders is how to put it down. We are so used to carrying it on our shoulders from day to day, month to month, that sometimes we don't even know how to live without worrying. The first step, and also the foundation for all peace later on, is to learn the two words Sundai in accord with conditions. It sounds simple, but to live with this spirit requires a whole profound practice and contemplation. Many people misunderstand that according with conditions means giving up, leaving it to fate. Whatever happens, happens. But that is not so, dear Buddhists. According with conditions is not a negative attitude, but an action of wisdom. It is when we have enough clarity to see an event clearly, distinguishing what is within our ability to change and what is something we must learn to accept. I would like to give an example for ease of understanding. Our life is like a person rowing a boat on a large river. There will be times when the sky is calm and the sea is silent. We can leisurely steer the boat in the direction we want. But there will also be times of heavy rain and from strong winds, and the water flows swiftly. A person without wisdom will try to tense up, using all their strength to row against the current, fighting against the wind. What is the result? It is that the boat doesn't move much, but the person is exhausted, and the boat might even capsize. As for the person with wisdom, they will not fight against the wind. They know that their strength cannot win against the strength of heaven and earth. Instead, they will learn to follow the direction of the wind, adjusting the sails so that the boat can still slowly move forward safely. The action of following the wind is exactly according with conditions. We are usually most tired, not when working, but when we are tensing up to fight against the winds of life, the things that inherently cannot be changed. For you, dear Buddhists, to understand this spirit deeper, I would like to tell a story about an old farmer in a certain village. All his life he only knew how to stick with his rice field. That field was the source of life for the whole family, so every year he worried. He worried that if it didn't rain, the rice would wither, but if it rained too much, the rice would be flooded. If the crop was lush, he worried about pests, then worried if he would get a good price at harvest time. Just like that, his mind never had a day of leisure, until one year when the rice was blooming green, promising a bountiful season, a big storm suddenly struck in. The next morning, when the sky cleared again, everyone in the village ran to the field, and everyone was shocked and heartbroken. The whole vast field was now devastated and ragged. The rice fallen flat and submerged in a sea of water. Everyone cried and lamented, blaming the heavens for betraying people's labor. Amidst that tragic scene, they saw that old farmer silently wading into the field without a word of complaint. He just silently scooped up the broken rice stalks, clearing the flow of water to salvage whatever part he could. A neighbor saw this, tears welling up, and ran over to ask, "Uncle, a whole year of our effort is now completely lost. Why aren't you sad or blaming anything?" The farmer stopped his hand, looked up at the neighbor, his face strangely gentle. He spoke slowly. "Being sad means I'm already sad, but will being sad or worried make the rice grow back? What belongs to heaven, we must return to heaven. Heaven giving a storm is heaven's business, while the business of a farmer like me is to sigh and care. If this season is lost, then we prepare for the next season." His words made everyone freeze. They realized that while they were wasting energy on resenting something that had already happened, something that could not be changed, the old man used his energy to do what needed to be done right in the present. Dear Buddhists, our life is also like the old man's field. There will be storms that suddenly strike that we cannot foresee. It could be a job we suddenly lose, a relationship we cherish suddenly breaking, an illness that comes uninvited, or a careless word from someone that hurts us. At those times, our natural reaction is to resist, to ask why it is me, to suffer, to torment ourselves. But just like the person rowing against the wind, that resistance only makes us more exhausted. Learning to accord with conditions is learning the spirit of that old farmer. We accept that the storm has come and gone. The loss is real. We do not hide from the sadness, but also do not drown in it. We look straight at reality, seeing clearly what cannot be changed, then gently accept it and focus energy on the things we can do right now to move forward. That is the first step to put the burden of anxiety down, to stop the meaningless war with reality so that our mind can have a moment of peace. A Buddhist asked, "Dear teacher, I tried my best, but the result was still not as desired. What should I do so I don't get discouraged and resentful?" Namo Buddha. This is a question that I believe more or less everyone among us has once silently asked ourselves during long sleepless nights. This question not only contains tiredness, but also hides inside a deep grievance, a sense of injustice, because in our consciousness, since we were young, we were always taught that if you grind iron, one day it becomes a needle, that as long as we put in our best effort, success will come. We believed in that like an uncheckable truth, and that very belief gave us the strength to overcome so many difficulties. We have seen the image of the student studying diligently by lamp and books for so many years, eating poorly, sleeping restlessly, only hoping one day to step into the university lecture hall. But then the result received is only the word failed. We have also seen the business person pour all their capital, heart, staying up late and waking early to build a career. But then after just one fluctuation of the market, everything suddenly vanishes into smoke. Or closer to home, we see the image of a mother, a father wholeheartedly loving and teaching their children, sacrificing everything for the children. But then the children grow up not as expected at those times. A feeling of emptiness and helplessness invades our soul. We feel like a farmer diligently sowing seeds on a rocky patch of land. No matter how much water we pour, how much fertilizer we add, the sprout still cannot rise. The initial disappointment gradually turns into discouragement. Then from discouragement it turns into resentment. We start to blame our fate for being so bleak, blame life for being unfair, blame people for not understanding, and sometimes we turn back to blame our own selves for being too weak and incompetent. That feeling of why did I try so hard yet still fail? It is like a knife cutting deep into our self-esteem, making us lose faith in effort, lose direction for the path ahead. Many people, because they cannot overcome this feeling, become negative, give up, and live in sulkiness with the whole world. They close the door of their soul, no longer daring to dream, and no longer daring to try because they are afraid that they will once again put all their heart and effort into something and finally receive hurt in return. That is a music, very great suffering, a psychological burden that, if not untied, will erode all the positive life energy of a human being. In Buddhism, the world-honored one taught us to perceive every event in this heaven and earth through the lens of cause, condition, and effect. This is a law of natural operation, not a punishment or a blessing from any deity. The cause is the seed, the main reason that we have sown. The effect is the result, the sweet fruit or bitter fruit that we will receive. However, from cause to effect, it is not a straight path, but it also needs an extremely important element in the middle, which is condition Dayan. Condition refers to the conditions, the supporting factors from the outside that help the cause to sprout and develop into fruit. A good orange seed is the cause, but if there's no condition like fertile soil, sunlight, water, and air, that orange seed cannot grow into a fruit-laden orange tree. Our best effort, dear Buddhists, is us trying our best to cultivate our cause. We care for that cause with sweat, tears, and heart. That is an extremely precious thing. However, we often forget that the final result not only depends on the cause, but also depends on countless conditions around it. A student studies very well good cause, but on the exam day, gets sick in wholesome condition. So the result is not as desired. A business person has a very good plan, good cause, but encounters an epidemic, unwholesome conditions, so they fail. The Buddha taught that a person with wisdom is a person who knows how to distinguish clearly what is the part of the cause, what is the part of the condition. We can only master our cause, meaning we can decide how much effort we will put in, how hard we try, how to keep our minds pure. As for the part of conditions like social circumstances, weather, health, or the minds of others, these are things beyond our control. When we understand this, we will no longer resent. So where does the root of discouragement and resentment when failing come from? It comes from two deep-seated attachments in our minds. First, we are attached to the result. We equate the value of music effort with the result it brings. We assume that an effort only has meaning if it leads to success. Therefore, when the result is not as desired, we immediately deny the entire process, assuming our effort was useless. Like building a castle on sand, this mentality makes us only know how to look at the destination while forgetting the beauty of the whole journey. We forget that exactly during that process of effort, we learned so many lessons. We became more mature, more patient, and stronger. A failed business project can teach us lessons about management, about the market that no school can teach. A failed exam can open up for us another path more suitable for us that we had never thought of before. When our mind is only stuck on a single fruit, we accidentally close the door to seeing other precious values that the process brings. The second attachment is deeper, which is attachment to the self, to the ego. Our ego really likes the feeling of being in control, being successful, being recognized. When we try our best, the ego secretly expects a reward, a worthy return. When the result is not as desired, the ego feels hurt, insulted. It feels life has betrayed its efforts, from which resentment is born. We resent because we think that we deserve to be like this. Matters should have happened differently. But, dear Buddhists, this life operates according to the law of causes and conditions, not according to the will of any ego. Understanding this is understanding the spirit of selflessness, knowing self that the Buddha taught. When we do something, let us do it with all our heart, but do it in the spirit of service, in the spirit of sowing a good seed, not doing it so the ego gets satisfied. Then, no matter what the result is, our mind remains calm, just like the farmer. In the story, he worked because that was the duty of a farmer, not working to demand that heaven and earth must give him a bountiful golden harvest. So what is the biggest lesson here? It is to learn how to shift our focus instead of focusing on controlling the fruit which lies beyond our reach. Let's focus on cultivating the seed very well. With a pure soul, let's make an effort not to achieve a specific result, but make an effort because the act of making an effort itself is already a meaningful thing. It helps us become a better version of ourselves. Every day, the value of a human being does not lie in whether they succeed or fail, but lies in whether they dare to stand up after stumbling or not, to practice. This in life, dear Buddhists, can practice a very simple method called returning to one's duty. Whenever our mind starts to arise with discouragement, resentment, because the result is not as desired, stop for a moment, take a deep breath and ask yourself, right in this moment, what is the best thing I can do? Just like the farmer when seeing the fallen rice, he didn't sit there crying because that was not something that could be done, but he went to clear the water flow. That was the thing he could do. When our mind is stuck on the result that is already done, it will be very tired. But when we bring it back to a specific action in the present, it will be anchored again. Let's do our part of the work best. Sow the seed truly well. As for the part of conditions and effect, learn to trust and accept the operation of the universe. Doing so, our mind will be much lighter and more at ease, no matter being in the midst of any adversity. Dear Buddhists, I know that learning how to accord with conditions and accepting results that are not as desired is one of the most difficult practice lessons on the path of studying the way. Everyone among us has once been the farmer standing before the devastated field after the storm, heart full of pain and disappointment. But precisely in those moments, if we can stop, take a deep breath, and remember that our job is only to sow good seeds, not to control the result, then our mind will start to find a way out. If these Dharma talk words are a good condition, bringing you, dear Buddhists, a little stability and the soul, I hope you will happily press the subscribe button so we have more opportunities to accompany each other on the path of learning the way. And in the comments section, if you don't mind, please share about a storm that you, dear Buddhists, have gone through and the lesson you received. I pray that for every time a Buddhist types down a line of words to share, it is also a time you are practicing putting down the burden and the mind. May every beautiful word and idea spread, become a source of wholesome energy, helping the writer be more steady and the reader more joyful. Respectfully wishing you, dear Buddhists, body and mind always at peace, wisdom day by day brighter, so that with every step walking amidst this life, whether meeting rain or sunshine, the heart remains always leisurely at ease. Namo Buddha, dear Buddhists. So in the previous part, we have explored together the first step, which is learning how to accord with conditions, meaning not tensing up, resisting things that cannot be changed. That is, us learning how to make peace with circumstances on the outside. But even when knowing how to accord with conditions, our mind still has an inherent habit, which is wandering, running and jumping ceaselessly. Even when our body sitting still in one place, our mind runs to the past to regret, runs to the future to worrying, forgetting that life is only truly happening right in this moment. Therefore, the second practice step, an extremely important step to find peace again, is learning how to live slowly and bring the mind back to dwell in the present. When hearing the two words live slowly, many people are often afraid. They think that living slowly is laziness, is falling behind compared to society, which is moving ceaselessly out there. But, dear Buddhists, living slowly in the spirit of Buddhism does not mean we work less or neglect responsibilities. Living slowly here is an art, is the ability for us to be present completely in every task we do, even the smallest task. That is practicing mindfulness Niyan. Mindfulness interpreted in the simplest way is when eating, just know you are eating. When drinking tea, just know you are drinking tea. When walking, just know you are walking. And when breathing, just know you are breathing. It sounds truly simple, but this is an extremely miraculous method to heal the tiredness in the soul, because most of our exhaustion does not come from the action of the body, but comes from the purposeless wandering of the mind. Because the body is here, but the mind is somewhere else, we will have our energy scattered and feel empty. Mindfulness is exactly the art of bringing the mind back to the body, unifying body and mind as one so we can live completely, to understand more clearly about the miracle of this complete presence. I would like to tell you, dear Buddhists, a very ordinary story. There was a son named Nam. He was very successful in business in the city. Although busy, he was still a filial son. Every week he would drive back to the countryside to eat a meal with his old mother. He thought that doing so was fulfilling his duty. Every time he returned, the old mother was happy. She would bustle down to the kitchen to cook the dishes he liked most since childhood. The meal was served fragrant with the taste of love, but during the meal, Nam had the habit of eating while holding the phone in his hand. He scrolled to see emails, work, replied to messages from partners. His mind was still being swept away by numbers, projects, and the city. He still picked up food for his mother, still asked a few social questions, but his eyes and mind had never truly left the phone screen. The mother saw this and said nothing. She just silently ate, occasionally looking at her son and gently music sighing. Things kept going on like that for a long time until one day, also during a meal as usual, when Nam was engrossed in replying to an important message, the mother suddenly gently put her chopsticks down. She looked at him with gentle eyes and said a very quiet sentence. Son, I don't wish for anything high and mighty. I only wish for a meal where you are truly here with me. The mother's words were like a large bell waking up Nam's mind. He suddenly froze, lifted his head to look at his mother. He saw his mother's hair had grayed much. Her eyes had crow's feet, and in those eyes contained a sadness that he had never realized before. Right at that moment, he shockingly realized that for so long he only brought his corpse back to his mother, while his soul, his true presence, had been stolen by work and worries out there. He was right next to the person he loved most but missed so many precious moments. He hurriedly put the phone down, looked at his mother, and said in a choked voice, Mom, I am sorry. From that day on, every time he visited his mother before stepping into the house, he turned off his phone. He sat down to eat with his mother, listening to her tell stories with no beginning and no end in the village. He felt music, the sweetness of every grain of rice, the rich taste of the fish his mother braised. He found the meal strangely delicious, and his mother's smile so radiant. He didn't do anything differently. It was still that meal, still that mother, but because his mind had returned, he was present in a complete way. So he discovered happiness right in the simplest things that he had accidentally ignored before. Dear Buddhists, this story is exactly a reminder for all of us. How many times are we beside our children, but our mind thinks of work? How many times do we talk to our spouse, but our brain wanders somewhere else? We keep going to find happiness somewhere far away without knowing that happiness is only present when we ourselves are present. Living slowly and practicing mindfulness is exactly the way for us to bring ourselves back so as not to miss the miracles of life happening right in every breath, right in the smiles of the loved ones beside us. A Buddhist asked, "Dear teacher, I really want to live slowly, but work and family keep sweeping me away. I don't have time to sit in meditation or practice properly. What should I do?" Namo Buddha. The question of the Buddhist is the inner voice of countless people in this era, an era where seemingly everyone is in a hurry. We hurry to complete work, hurry to take care of the family, hurry not to fall behind. The wheel of life keeps sweeping us along from early dawn until late at night, to the point where sometimes we feel like we are a machine operating at full capacity rather than a human being truly living anymore. Many people, when hearing the two words cultivation or practicing mindfulness, immediately visualize a very ideal scene, a quiet room, a soft cushion, and a period of at least 30 minutes to 1 hour without being disturbed by anyone. And then they look back at their lives. They see the morning worrying about children's schooling, taking children to school, then rushing to the office. All day the brain is tense like a string with numbers, meetings, work, deadlines. Afternoon back to hurriedly picking up children, cooking, cleaning the house. By the time they lay their back on the bed, the body has fallen apart, only wishing for a deep sleep. Looking at that tight schedule, they tell themselves, where is the time to practice? Living slowly is a luxury that I cannot have, and so they resign to shelving the wish to find peace, continuing to throw themselves into the familiar cycle, carrying in their hearts a tiredness and a silent regret. They feel that seemingly the spiritual path is only for those with blessings, with enough leisure, conditions. As for them, it is a dream that cannot be reached. It is precisely this thought of no time that has become a big obstacle, an invisible wall preventing us. We seek the peace inherently available in our minds. The Buddha and the patriarchs, when teaching us the path of practice, never limited it to a posture or a specific space. There is a very famous saying in Zen: walking, standing, lying, sitting are all Zen. What does this sentence mean? Meditation is not an action we must add to our busy schedule. Meditation is a state of mind, is the quality of life. It is the ability for us to be present completely, aware clearly of what we are doing right in the present moment. Any action in life, from washing a cup, sweeping a house, to taking a step, if done in mindfulness, becomes a precious time of meditation practice. A Zen master is not someone who sits on a cushion more than us, but is someone who has the ability to keep a mindful mind in every posture, every action of life. Therefore, the problem does not lie in how much free time we have, but lies in whether we know how to turn our busy periods into practice time or not. When we understand this, we will see that we do not lack time to practice, but on the contrary, the entire 24 hours each day is an opportunity for us to return to ourselves. The root of the feeling of having no time is actually not because we have too many things to do, but because while working, our mind does not stay still in one place. Our mind has a habit that Buddhism calls monkey mind, horse will yma, meaning the mind swings like a gibbon. The wool runs around like a horse when washing dishes. We are not truly washing dishes, but our mind is worrying about tomorrow's work. When driving, we are not truly driving, but our mind is annoyed about a sentence someone said this morning. While playing with children, our body is there, but our mind is scrolling through the phone. It is this dissociation between body and mind that is the main cause, making us exhausted. We consume energy, not because of the action, but because of the streams of thinking, worrying, calculating endlessly that never stop. Dear Buddhists, please recall the story of Nam and the old mother. Did he have time to sit and eat with his mother? Yes, but why did that meal not have quality, not bring happiness? Because his mind was not present there. So the problem is not adding time, but living deeply in the time we have instead of viewing mindfulness practice as another burden to add. Let's view it as a method to make the work we are doing become lighter and more meaningful. When you wash dishes in mindfulness, you will only focus on the warm water flow, on the soap bubbles, on the sensation of the hands. You don't think of other things at that time. Washing dishes is no longer laborious toil, but becomes a moment of relaxation, an opportunity for the mind to rest. When the mind gets to rest right while the body is working, you will find yourself having more energy, working more effectively, and no longer feeling pressure. Thus, mindfulness does not take away our time, but on the contrary, it returns to us the quality of life in every moment. The lesson here is don't wait to have time to practice, but turn everything you do into practice. You don't need to search for 30 minutes of free time, but learn how to utilize the moments that you have. First is the 3-breath meditation. Whenever you prepare to start a new task, for example, before opening the computer to work, before making a phone call, or before stepping into the house. After a long day, stop for about 10 seconds, stand still and breathe in, breathe out deeply 3 times consciously. Breathe in. No, I am breathing in. Breathe out. No, I am breathing out. Just 3 breaths. But it has a very great function, helping us cut off the stream of wandering thoughts, bringing the mind back to the body and starting the new task with a calmer, clearer mindset. Second is choosing a mindful action. In the day, you should choose a familiar task that you do every day. For example, brushing teeth, drinking a cup of tea in the morning, or walking from the parking lot into the office, and promise yourself that during the time doing that, I will dedicate 100% attention to it. If it is drinking tea, feel the warmth of the tea cup, the scent, the sweet taste on the tip of the tongue. If it is walking, feel every footstep touching the ground. Feel the breeze gliding over the skin. Don't think of other things. Each day just needs a small action like that. But it is like we are watering the seed of awakening in our mind. gradually. That mindfulness energy will naturally spread to other activities in the day, and you will see that peace is not something that needs to be found, but is a material that can be crafted right amidst this busy life. Dear Buddhists, perhaps after hearing the story of Nam and the old mother, many people among us will also be startled to realize how many times we returned home that the mind was still wandering at the office, how many times we sat beside our children, but our hearts were entangled in worries somewhere. A busy life is not an excuse, but is exactly the land for us to practice bringing the mind back, only needing 3 mindful breaths before stepping across the threshold. We can already bring back to the family a father, a mother truly complete. If these shared words are a stream of cool water watering your souls, dear Buddhist, helping you find peace again, right amidst the chaos, please happily press the channel subscribe button so that our path of studying the way always has companions. And in today's comments section, dear Buddhists, let's share together a mindful action that you will practice in the day. It could simply be, I will drink this morning coffee in awakening, or I will turn off the phone during the afternoon meal, praying that every determination sown down will be a seed of peace sprouting. May every comment shared become a loving reminder so that we can together build a community that knows how to live slowly, knows how to cherish the present, respectfully wishing Buddhists every breath in and out is a source of peace. Every footstep is steady and at ease. Namo Buddha. Dear all Buddhists, in the previous parts we have learned together how to accord with conditions, to make peace with external adversity, and learned how to live slowly in mindfulness to bring the mind back to the present moment. When practicing like that, our mind has already started to settle like a lake after a storm, has lessened the large waves. However, when looking deeply into that quiet lake surface, we will discover that at the bottom of the lake there are still rocks, the rotten branches that we have unintentionally accumulated from so many years. Those heavy objects are the pains of the past, the mistakes we haven't been able to forgive ourselves for, the images of old people we still cling to. No matter how calm the lake surface is, just a light breeze blowing through those heavy objects stir up again, making the water turbid again. At this time, according with conditions alone is not enough. Mindfulness alone is also not enough, but we need a stronger practice, an action of wisdom that is letting go bungyaks. We need to distinguish clearly between according with conditions and letting go. According with conditions is when we are traveling on a river. We do not fight against the flowing water, while letting go is when we dare to bravely open our hands, releasing the heavy rocks that we ourselves are hugging tight in our hearts, the rocks that are making our boat of mind sink. Many people are very afraid of the 2 words letting go. They think that letting go is loss, letting go is failure, letting go is weakness. But in the spirit of Buddha's teaching, letting go is an action of strength and freedom, because the person who dares to let go is the person with the courage to face the truth that nothing is permanent. Nothing can be held forever, and when we understand that we are truly liberated, letting go is not losing, but having space again in the soul so that new good things have a chance to enter. Letting go is not forgetting, but being able to recall a sad memory without the heart stinging anymore. being able to look back at a mistake without self-torment anymore. That is true healing for dear Buddhists to visualize more clearly about the wisdom of this letting go. I would like to tell a story about an old potter in an ancient craft village. His whole life, he only had one wish, which was to create a most perfect ceramic vase, a masterpiece. For a lifetime, he spent tens of years, failing countless times, finally creating music, a vase with a beautiful shape, a unique glaze color never seen before. He viewed it as a treasure, as his life. The day came when he prepared to bring the vase to the capital to attend a grand exhibition. While moving, he just accidentally slipped his hand a little. The vase fell to the ground and shattered into many pieces. Everyone around was stunned, regretting the effort of his whole life suddenly poured into the river and sea wasted. Everyone thought that he would suffer and writhe in pain. However, contrary to everyone's thoughts, the old artisan just silently stood looking at the broken pieces for a while. Then he calmly sat down, carefully picking up each piece one by one, missing no piece. A few days later, people saw him not trying to create a new vase, but using a special lacquer mixed with real gold powder, meticulously binding the broken pieces back together. When the work was completed, the broken vase from that day now appeared with a beauty even more unique than before. The crack lines were no longer flaws, but had become shimmering golden lines, sparkling like rivers flowing on the vase's body, retelling the story. A student did not understand and asked, "Dear teacher, why didn't you throw it away but wasted effort on a broken object?" The artisan smiled. Kindly, he said, "Before it was beautiful because of perfection, but that perfection only existed in our imagination. It is fragile and easy to break, but now it is beautiful because of its very imperfection. It is beautiful because it dares to show everyone, even the wounds that have been healed. This beauty is the beauty of truth, of life. Dear Buddhists, that ceramic vase is exactly the life of each of us. Everyone among us wishes to have a perfect life, not a crack, not a sadness, but life is inherently impermanent. Stumbles, breakages are unavoidable things. We suffer because we keep regretting the initial perfect image that we painted in our minds. We cannot accept the cracks of reality. Letting go is learning the spirit of the old artisan. Instead of discarding the past or trying to cover up those hurts, let's learn to face it. Use the material of understanding and love, which is the golden lacquer of the soul, to heal those wounds. Then the mistakes, the pains in the past are no longer burdens pulling us down, but become precious lessons, golden lines making our lives more profound and meaningful. Letting go of attachment to a past that cannot be changed is the way for us to find our complete beauty right in this imperfect reality. It is not an act of oblivion, but an act of wisdom and love. A Buddhist asked, "Dear teacher, someone hurt me very deeply. My reason knows I should let go to live happily, but my heart is full of resentment, unable to forget. What must I do?" Namo Buddha. This is a heavy confiding that perhaps anyone among us, if living long enough in this life, will at least once have to face. It is the pain when being hurt by the very person we trust and love. It is the grievance when being treated unfairly. It is the scar in the soul left by a word an unintentional or intentional action of another. You speak very correctly. Our reason is very clear-sighted. It always reminds us that holding on to resentment is just like drinking poison but hoping the other person dies. Reason understands that the person suffering the most is oneself, that one should let down to find peace again. But our heart is a different story. It does not operate by logic but operates by emotion. Every time we try to forget, the images, the words of the past appear clearly again, like a movie played over and over without an end. The wound in the heart seems like it never healed. If anyone accidentally touches it lightly, it throbs painfully. We feel that if we let go, if we forgive, it means we are admitting that the other person's action was correct, that we are condoning evil, that we are trivializing our own pain. Precisely that feeling of wanting to demand justice, that mind of non-acceptance, has held us back, locking us in a prison of the past. We keep standing there, staring at the door that has closed, forgetting that around us there are still so many other doors opening with sunlight and wind. This struggle between reason and heart is one of the tiring and persistent inner battles. It takes from us countless amounts of peaceful energy when facing this suffering. The Buddha did not teach us to use reason to suppress emotions, nor did he tell us to try to forget, because the more we try to forget, the more we remember. The path that the world-honored one showed us is the path of compassion and wisdom. He taught that when in our hand we are holding a hot coal, the thing to do is not to analyze where this coal came from, why it is hot, but the first and only thing to do is open the hand and put it down. The resentment in our heart is just like that hot coal. We keep holding it tight with the intention of throwing it at the person who hurt us, but the person burned first and most severely is us. Therefore, letting go here is not an action for the other person, but a gift we give to ourselves. That is an action of compassion for oneself. When we decide to let down, the resentment is not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because we deserve peace. Our heart has endured too much suffering already. It doesn't deserve to continue being burned by the fire of hatred anymore. Forgiveness is not declaring the other person innocent, but declaring that we will not let their actions continue to have the power to make us suffer in the present and future. That is us reclaiming the right to master our lives. So where does the root of our inability to let go of resentment lie? It lies in the attachment to things. First, we are attached to the feeling of being a victim. When hurt, our ego really likes playing the role of the victim, because when being a victim, we feel we are right, we are on the righteous side, and we have the right to resent the other person. The story about that pain becomes a part of our identity, of our identification. We keep retelling that story to ourselves and to others. Unintentionally, we are watering that seed of suffering to grow. Every day, letting go of resentment means we must give up that victim role. But this is something our ego does not want at all. Second, deeper, is that we haven't seen the suffering of the very person who caused us suffering. In the Dhammapada Sutra, Buddha taught hatred cannot be ended by hatred. Only love can end hatred. Why is that? Because a person can only cause suffering to others when they themselves are also full of suffering. The action of hurting others stems from ignorance. from greed, from hatred, from the fear inside themselves. A person who is truly happy and at peace, they will never have the need to make others suffer. When we see the other person with the eye of wisdom, we will see they are not only an evil person, but they are also a pitiable person, a person being controlled by their own afflictions. From that view, compassion in us will arise, and when compassion is present, resentment will no longer have ground to exist. We no longer view them as an enemy, but view them as a reverse-conditioned bodhisattva, a teacher who came into this life to teach us the hardest lesson, that is the lesson of forgiveness and compassion. The most important lesson is to want to let go of resentment toward people. First, one must arise compassion for oneself. Let's view forgiveness as an act of healing for our soul. To practice this, dear Buddhists can practice a method called compassion meditation Kwanti Bai. Every day, spend a few minutes sitting very quietly. Direct the mind to yourself. Place hand on heart and silently say, I pray for myself to be peaceful. Pray for my heart to be healed of all wounds. Pray for me not to be burned by the fire of hatred anymore. I deserve peace. Truly feel the gentleness and love that you are giving to yourself. Let's start directing the mind to the person who hurt us. Visualize them standing in front of us. Instead of thinking of their mistakes, try contemplating their suffering. Then silently say, I see that you acted like that because of ignorance and suffering in your heart. Pray that you also find peace so as not to go sowing suffering for others anymore. Pray that you are also happy. I know this second step is very hard. Perhaps at first you will feel very forced. It's okay. This is a practice, not a test. Just patiently do it a little each day, like dripping drops of water on a rock. Over time, the rock will also soften. Every time we arise a thought of compassion for the other person is a time we are untying a rope of injustice, binding ourselves. When the last rope is untied, that is when we truly find freedom. Dear Buddhists, perhaps in the deep depths of the soul of each of us, everyone has a broken ceramic vase, an unfinished dream, a betrayed trust, or a heartbreak that hasn't faded. We often have the tendency to hide those broken pieces, viewing it as a shameful failure. But through the story of the old artisan, we learn that it is the cracks healed by love and acceptance that make up the most profound beauty of a human life. If today's Dharma talk has touched a certain crack in your hearts, dear Buddhists, and brought a little healing energy, please happily press the subscribe button to continue the journey together, turning the broken pieces of our lives into works of art. And in the comments section, instead of telling about sadness, dear Buddhists, try sharing a lesson, even the smallest one, that you learned from a stumble, praying that every shared line will be a stroke of golden lacquer, turning pain into wisdom, turning sad memories into precious life experience. Praying for you through this practice of letting go to find lightness in the mind, so that every day passing is no longer a burden of the past, but an opportunity to live happily and at ease. The story about the hot teacup, Namo Buddha, dear entire assembly, to understand deeper about the art of letting go of resentments in the heart. I would like to tell a story about a young man named Tuan Ko. Tuan Ko was a talented young man coming from a poor family, but thanks to will and intelligence, he built a solid career in the city when his age was still very young. Accompanying him on that arduous path of establishing a career was his best friend, a person he viewed as a blood brother sharing sweets and bitters. However, at the time when the career of both was developing the most, that person, because of personal benefit, silently betrayed him, appropriating all the effort and assets that he had frugally built for so long. That shock made Tuan Kor collapse. But what made him more painful than the material loss was the breakdown of trust. Since that day, his soul only remained a gray color. During the day, he still tried to force himself to work, but at night the fire of resentment and hatred flared up, burning his insides. He could not at any moment soothe the image of the treacherous friend, could not at any moment forget the lying words. He lost sleep continuously. Smiles also no longer appeared on his face and heart. He became callous, no longer trusting anyone anymore. He saw himself as being locked in a prison created by himself, where the bars were the sad memories. Hearing people rumor that on the mountain to the west there was an ancient hermitage named Tenluam Quiet Reflection Hermitage, where there was a venerable monk of old age, dignified conduct, who could help people untie the sorrows in their hearts. Although not very trusting, but in despair, Tuan Kor still decided to seek it out, viewing it as a ray of hope. Finally, the road up to the Hermitage was a small path paved with stones. On both sides were green bamboo forests. The air on the mountain was fresh and quiet, only the sound of wind rustling and birds singing. When Tuan Kor arrived, he saw an old monk with white hair and beard, slender figure, leisurely using a bamboo broom to sweep the dry leaves falling in the yard. That old monk was Venerable Thenan. Seeing a guest arrive, he showed no surprise, just gently smiled, a gentle smile like the morning sunlight. Then gently music invited him inside the Hermitage to have tea. Inside the Hermitage, everything was simple and plain. Venerable Thenan slowly kindled the stove, boiled water. Every movement of his was leisurely, gentle, and focused. He didn't ask what business Tuan Kor had coming here, nor did he preach a word of moral doctrine. He just silently made tea, while Tuan Kor sat opposite, heart full of impatience and skepticism. When the water in the kettle boiled, Venerable Thenan poured a piping hot cup of tea, steam rising thickly, the gentle tea scent spreading throughout the room. He handed the tea cup to Tuan Kor and said a very strange sentence. "Son, please hold this tea cup and keep it in your hand for me for a moment." Tuan Kor, although he didn't understand, still followed. He reached out two hands to receive the teacup. Immediately when his fingers touched the cup wall, a wave of heat blasted, making him startle. The teacup was hotter than he thought a lot. He tried to grit his teeth to endure because he didn't want to appear weak in front of the Venerable. 1 second, 2 seconds passed. The heat increasingly penetrated through the ceramic layer, transmitting straight into his flesh. His palms started to turn red. The feeling of burning became increasingly unbearable. He tried to muster all his calm strength to keep the teacup from spilling. Sweat on his forehead had broken out in beads. Venerable Thenan still sat still, compassionate eyes looking at him, saying not a word. Finally, when the heat exceeded the limit of endurance, Tuan Kor could not hold it anymore. He let go of his hand, by natural reflex. The teacup fell to the tile floor, shattering into many pieces, hot tea water splashing everywhere. At this time Venerable Thienan raised his warm voice, slowly asking, "Why did you let it go?" Tuan Kar, rubbing his burning hands while panting, reply, "Reverend teacher, because it was too hot, it burned. Emmy, I couldn't hold it anymore." The Venerable gently nodded his eyes, looking deep into Tuan Kor's heart. Then he deliberately said, "The resentment in your heart is just like this hot teacup." That sentence was like a large bell resonating. In Tuan Kor's head he suddenly froze, looked up at the Venerable, his whole body, like having an electric current run through. Venerable Thien and spoke, "On, voice full of kindness, you think that when you hold on to resentment, you are punishing the person who hurt you. But look, you try to hold on to this hot teacup. Who gets burned? Who's in pain? It is you, not me." Similarly, when you hold on to hatred in your heart day after day, month after month, the person hurting themselves, the person losing sleep and appetite, the person living in the hell of affliction is you, not the other person. And letting go of the teacup was not because the teacup deserved to be let go, but because your hand deserved peace you let go of. Resentment also like that, not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because your heart deserves to be healed. Every word of the Venerable was like every drop of sweet dew watering Tuan Kor's dry soul. How many solid fortress walls of stubbornness in his heart suddenly collapsed. He realized that for so long he thought he was holding a weapon to take revenge on others. But it turned out the thing he was holding was exactly the torch, burning his own life. He lowered his head. To rows of warm tears flowed out, but these were not tears of resentment, but tears of awakening. Dear Assembly, Tuan Kor's story is the story of very many people among us. We often have the tendency to cling to hurts in the past, hug tightly resentment, and assume that is the way to protect ourselves. But the Buddha taught that answering hatred with hatred piles up. Answering hatred with virtue, hatred disappears. Love and forgiveness are exactly the water source that can extinguish the fire of hatred. Letting go does not mean we must forget what happened, nor does it mean we agree with the wrong actions of others. Letting go is an action of wisdom. It is when we realize that continuing to hold on to the hot coal of hatred only makes us burn. Letting go is us choosing the way to liberate ourselves from the prison of the past so that our soul can be free, so that we can live completely with the present moment. When our heart is no longer heavy with resentment, only then do we have enough space to contain peace and happiness. That is the most precious gift that letting go can bring to the life of each of us. A Buddhist task. Dear teacher, I understand letting go of resentment is good for me, but is letting go condoning evil so people continue to harm me and others? Namo Buddha. This is a question, a concern extremely profound. It is not a question of a weak person, but the concern of a person with compassion and a sense of responsibility, because in our minds, beside the wish to be peaceful for ourselves, we also have a voice of justice, of protection when harmed by someone, especially when their action not only affects us, but can also cause harm to many others. An inner struggle immediately breaks out. On one hand, we listen to Buddha's teaching to let go of hatred so the mind is light, but on the other hand, a fear arises. If I let go so easily, am I silently agreeing to their wrong action? Am I creating conditions for them to continue to go harm other innocent people? No, this fear is very real. It is like when we see a poisonous snake in a home garden. We know that if we just stand there looking at it with hatred, we will live in fear. But if told to turn our back and act like nothing is there, then we worry that the snake will crawl into the house and bite our loved ones. Therefore, we are stuck in the middle. We don't want to keep resentment, but we also don't dare let it go because we mistakenly believe that resentment is the weapon, the only motivation for us to be vigilant and protect ourselves. Just like punishment, we fear that when the fire of hatred extinguishes, we will become weak, soft, and once again become a victim. It is this confusion between letting go of hatred in the mind and giving up responsibility in action that has caused so many people to be unable to truly let go. To untie this knot, we need to return to the example of the world-honored one himself. Throughout his life of preaching the Dharma, the Buddha faced countless people who wanted to harm him, typically like his cousin Devadatta or the bandit Angulimala. Toward these people, did the Buddha's mind ever arise resentment? No, his mind was always full of compassion. He always saw the suffering, the ignorance dominating and controlling them. That is, he had let go of hatred in the mind. However, letting go of hatred does not mean he condoned their actions. When Devadatta divided the Sangha, the Buddha used wisdom and precise teachings to help the bhikkhus return to the right path. When the bandit Angulimala was on the way to kill his own mother, the Buddha used supernatural powers and skillful means to prevent that action. Thus, we see very clearly the Buddha taught us to distinguish clearly between two things: the compassionate mind and wise action. The mind is always open, forgiving, not resentful, but action must be clear-sighted, must be based on wisdom to prevent evil and protect good. Letting go is letting go of affliction in one's mind, not letting go of responsibility regarding the safety of oneself and the community. Why do we often confuse these two things? The root of this confusion comes from attachment to self, from our ego. The ego often tells us that we must be angry to have strength to act, must hate to keep vigilance. It mistakenly believes that hatred is the necessary fuel for a protective action, but this is an extremely huge mistake. Hatred is not the fuel of strength. It is poison blurring wisdom and action. Stemming from a mind of hatred is usually a blind action, vengeful in nature, and the result only creates more injustice, making suffering pile up even more. It is like a doctor with hands trembling because of anger. How can they perform a precise surgery to save a person? On the contrary, an action stemming from a calm, clear-sighted, and compassionate mind is truly an action with strength. When our mind is no longer obscured by the fire of hatred, our wisdom has a chance to manifest. We will see the problem clearly, see what is the cause, what is the best solution. Action at that time is not to take revenge, but to reestablish order, to protect, and music to transform. Just like the doctor with steady hands, calm mind, they will clearly see where the tumor is and remove it most accurately, causing least damage to the body, returning to Tuan Kor's story. Him letting go of the hot teacup of resentment in the mind does not mean that he must go back to doing business together or trusting that friend again. That is foolishness. Wise action here is that in the mind there is forgiveness, no longer letting the image of that person make him suffer, but in action he must learn the lesson about caution, must have legal measures to protect his assets if needed, and must know how to choose friends to play with in the future. These two things do not contradict each other at all. The core lesson here is to let go of the mind of hatred. Do not let go of clear-sighted responsibility. We need to learn how to separate the reaction of the mind and the action of the body. The mind can be like a quiet lake, but hands can still build solid dikes to prevent floods. To practice this whenever dear Buddhists face a person or a situation causing hurt. Try practicing the method of contemplating mind and action. Contemplating mind. Sit still, close eyes, look deep into your anger, view it like the hot teacup. Breathe and say to your heart, I am seeing anger in me. I know it is making me suffer. I ask for permission to put this teacup down because I deserve peace. This is when we practice letting go, internally contemplating action. After the mind has calmed somewhat, open eyes and ask yourself clearly, with this circumstance, what action is necessary and wisest to protect myself and others? What action will prevent bad things from continuing without sowing more seeds of hatred? When dear Buddhists practice separating these to parts, you will find yourselves both having peace in the soul and having enough clarity to act effectively and correctly on the outside. That is the middle way, the path of compassion together with wisdom. The story about the ancient banyan tree, Namo Buddha, dear entire assembly, if the story of Tuan Ko taught us how to let go of resentment, then the following story will talk about another attachment, a very subtle attachment that sometimes we do not realize, that is, attachment to the past, to what we once were. The story goes that at the entrance of a certain village, there was an ancient banyan tree. No one in the village knew exactly how old it was. Its canopy spread wide like a giant umbrella, shading a wide yard where the children in the village often gathered to play, where the elders sat to enjoy the breeze and tell stories of old times. That banyan tree was seen as the soul of the village, a witness to so many generations passing, and the person attached to that banyan tree more than anyone was Old Man Tu. Old Man Tu once was the village chief, most respected by everyone. In his youth, he was a talented, resourceful person who led the villagers to overcome so many difficulties, building roads, schools. Everyone in the village was grateful and respected him. Now, when Old no longer being the village chief, his biggest joy every day was bringing a bamboo chair out to sit under the ancient banyan tree. He sat there for hours, saying nothing, just silently watching the lush canopy, watching the bunches of aerial roots thrusting down to the ground. When someone passed by to greet him, he just nodded, eyes distant in his mind. This banyan tree was not just a tree, it was a symbol of his golden time. Every leaf, every branch seemed to be retelling stories about a majestic, strong old man Tu of the past. He clung to the banyan tree like clinging to his own glorious past. However, the law of impermanence spares no thing. The banyan tree was too old. Inside, the trunk had started to rot hollow. Many large branches were dry and at risk of breaking and falling at any time, especially during the stormy season. The new village chief, a young man named Nam, seeing this, was very worried for the safety of the people, especially the group of small children, often playing under the tree. After meeting many times, the whole village came to the decision to cut down the banyan tree to avoid disaster, and would use that very land to build a new cultural house for the village. When hearing this news, old man Tu objected fiercely. He argued that it was an ungrateful act, erasing the history of the whole village. He said, "While I am alive, no one is allowed to touch a branch, a leaf of it." He was furious, suffering, feeling like people were trying to cut down his very past and existence. He felt forgotten, no longer respected by anyone. From then on, he sat at the banyan tree even more, as if to guard, protect the final fortress of pride within him. Then one night, a big storm hit the village, wind howling, rain pouring down. Old man Tu lay in the house, but his heart was not at peace, only worrying about the banyan tree. At the village entrance the next morning at dawn, when the rain had abated, he hurriedly leaned on his cane. Running out, a heartbreaking scene appeared before his eyes. One of the largest banyan branches, as big as a human body, had been broken by the storm. Lying in disarray on the ground, the main trunk was also split open, a large piece, revealing the gut that had been hollow, rotten for who knows when. The ancient banyan tree now looked ragged and desolate, like an old general fallen after the final battle. Old man Tu stood frozen, tears just flowing for him. This was not just a broken tree branch, but an entire era of his had truly collapsed. Just then his little granddaughter, baby Na, also ran out, but contrary to his suffering look, the child cheered up happily. She pointed at a bunch of banyan roots uprooted from the ground after the storm. There was a green sprout just popping up. Baby Na pulled his hand, voice clear. "Grandpa, look, a baby tree is growing up, Grandpa. Later it will grow big, creating shade for us to play again, Grandpa." Old man Tu looked down, following his granddaughter's hand. Amidst the ruin and desolation of the old banyan tree, a new life sprout was rising up strongly. The innocent eyes and joy of the little grandchild suddenly made him freeze. He suddenly realized one thing. For so long, he kept stubbornly holding on to the image of the big, majestic banyan tree of the past. Yet, he forgot that life is always moving, always changing. The old banyan tree dying is not an end, but to yield space for a new sprout. Keeping a hollow, rotten tree full of danger is of no use. Let it fall down, return to Mother Earth, and from that very land a new generation will rise. At that moment, old man Tu was enlightened. People wanting to cut the banyan tree was not them denying his merit, but they wanted to cultivate the future. The memory of him, of a time past, will not be lost. It will be like the nutrients from the rotten banyan trunk, silently nourishing the new cultural house for the young generation. Later, the next morning, old man Tu himself took the initiative to meet village chief Nam. He said, "Go ahead and cut the banyan tree, but please keep the best wood of it. I want to use that wood with my own hands to make a truly beautiful set of tables and chairs to place in the new cultural house. I want old people like me to have a place to sit and tell stories for children and grandchildren to listen to. Everyone in the village was surprised and extremely respectful. Before his change, Old Man T.U. was no longer a stubborn old man clinging to the past. He had become a true ancient banyan tree, ready to fall down to shelter and nourish the future sprouts. Dear assembly, everyone among us has a banyan tree in our heart. It could be a success in the past, a position we once had, a love we cannot forget, or simply just the image of ourselves in the days of youth. We often have the tendency to cling to those images and suffer when they are no more. But Old Man Two's story reminds us that letting go of the past is not erasing or betraying it. Letting go is wisdom to see that everything is impermanent. There is birth, then there is death. There is prosperity, then there is decline. Letting go is courage to let what is old return to dust, to make room for new things, to proliferate. When we no longer stubbornly cling to what has been, only then can we live completely and happily with what is being. The greatest legacy that we can leave behind is not unchanging achievements, but exactly the ability to transform and adapt. Just like Old Man T.U. turned the rotten banyan wood into a useful set of tables and chairs, continuing to serve life. That is the most beautiful spirit of letting go. A Buddhist asked, "Dear teacher, I always live with memories of when I was young, when I was healthy, successful, and respected by many. Now, when everything has passed, I feel the current life is truly meaningless and empty. What must I do to escape this regret?" Namo Buddha. The confiding words of the Buddhist are a silent sadness that very many people among us, especially those who have passed the other side of the slope of life, are having to face. That is the feeling when we sit alone and flip back through the album of the past. And that album, every photo is brilliant with color. The image of a boy, girl brimming with vitality. The image of a talented leader standing on the peak of glory. The image of a mother, a father, seeing the whole world in the eyes of a young child. Everything in the past was truly beautiful, truly meaningful. But then when we close the album and look at reality, we only see a pale gray color. We see a body that has started to have signs of age, a job with no more challenges. Children have grown wise and no longer need our shelter. We feel like a king who has lost the throne, an actor who has retreated behind the wings, only left alone with the stage lights turned off. That feeling of emptiness and meaninglessness invades the soul, making us no longer find joy in the ordinary things of the present. We keep comparing forever between the back then and the now, and every time comparing is a time we make ourselves suffer more. That regret is like a layer of thick fog covering all the beauty of life happening, making us only know to look behind without being able to step forward serenely. When facing this suffering, the Buddha taught us to contemplate on one of the most foundational truths of the universe, which is the teaching of impermanence. Impermanence means nothing exists forever. Everything is always in a state of birth, abiding, changing, and extinction, meaning being born, existing for a time, changing, and finally disintegrating. Brilliant spring will also have to yield space for summer, A beautiful flower blooms early, then will also fade in the evening. Our youth and health also do not lie outside that law. We suffer not because change happens, but because we resist that change. We want to hold on forever to a moment, an image, a state that we consider best. That clinging, that attachment in Buddhism is called attachment shape, just like old man Tun. The story, he suffered because he was attached to the image of the big majestic banyan tree of the past. He could not accept the truth that it was old and rotten hollow. Our suffering also comes from us attaching to the image of ourselves in the past. When we understand that change is a natural and inevitable flow of life, just like a river must always flow to the sea, we will learn how to no longer try to build a dam to stop it. Instead, we will learn how to flow with the current gently and peacefully. So where does the root of this regret lie? It lies in that we have committed to big mistakes. The first mistake is that we equate our human being with what we have done or possessed. We think that I am a successful director, I am an important mother, I am a healthy person, but actually director, mother, or healthy person are just roles, states that we experience in a stage of life, inherently not our true nature. Our true nature, which Buddhism calls Buddha nature or original mind, is like the sky, while roles, successes, or failures are just like clouds. Clouds sometimes scatter, sometimes gather, sometimes white, sometimes black, but the sky is always there, clear and never changing. When we cling to a cloud, we will suffer when that cloud flies away. But when we realize we are the sky, we will be able to smile and watch all clouds come and go at ease. The second mistake is we view the past and present as two opposing things. We assume the glorious past is lost and the empty present is here. But actually the past is not lost. It has transformed into our very person. In the present, the past is the root, and the present is the trunk and branches. The roots, although lie hidden under the ground unseen by anyone, are silently nourishing the trunk to be steady. The successes, experiences, lessons of yesterday have forged the maturity, the depth of you. Dear Buddhists, today your value is not lost. It just shifted from this form to another form, from external dynamism to calmness. Wisdom on the inside, like old man Tun, his value no longer lies in the position of village chief, but it transformed into respect, into a spiritual shade for the whole village, or like the ancient banyan tree, its value is no longer the canopy shading sun, but it has transformed into the set of tables and chairs, continuing to serve future generations. The biggest lesson here is your value does not lie in what you used to be, but lies in the wisdom, the maturity that you have accumulated. Roles can change, but value is not lost. It just needs to be expressed by a new form to practice. This, dear Buddhists, can practice a method called gratitude and service practice. Gratitude. Instead of regretting the past, learn to be grateful to it every night before sleeping. Spend a few minutes sitting still, visualize your successes, beautiful memories, but instead of saying if only, say thank you. I thank life for giving me years of youth full of enthusiasm. Thank you to successes for giving me confidence. Thank you to stumbles for teaching me the lesson of humility. When we look at the past with eyes of gratitude, It will no longer be a burden, but become a treasure, a source of energy nourishing us in the present service. After knowing gratitude for the past, ask yourself this question. With all the maturity, the wisdom that I have here, how can I be of use to life right in this moment? Even if just a small thing, this question will shift your focus from regretting yourself to the mind of serving others. You don't need to do anything huge. You can use your experience to advise a young person facing difficulty. You can use the patience of age to listen to the confidences of children and grandchildren. You can use your time to care for a small garden, bringing beauty to life. When we find a way to serve, no matter how small, we will see this life as never meaningless. Just like old man T.U., he found new meaning when making the set of tables and chairs for the cultural house with his own hands. That is the way for us to continue shining, not with a halo of the past, but with the calm and warm light of wisdom and love in the present. Namo Buddha. Respectfully, dear entire Buddhist assembly, so we have traveled together a path of contemplation, a journey going deep inside to look back at ourselves, to identify the invisible burdens that for so long we have carried on our shoulders. I know that the path of transforming suffering is not a path paved with roses, but it demands of us a lot of courage, patience, and profound love. We started the journey by realizing that most tiredness in life does not come from circumstances, but comes from the very shadow of worrying, of delusions that we paint ourselves. From that identification, we have together learned the first step, which is learning how to accord with conditions, with reality. Like the old farmer before the storm, we learn to accept what cannot be changed, no longer tensing up to fight against the flow of causes and conditions, to let our mind have a minute of rest. When the mind has less resistance to the outside, we continue to the second step, which is learning how to live slowly to return to the miraculous present. Like Nam in the story, we realize that happiness is nowhere far away. It lies right in the meal we eat and the words we give, as long as we are present there, completely with the energy of mindfulness. And then when having dwelling in the present, we have enough strength to perform the third step, a step of wisdom, which is letting go. We have contemplated together the image of the hot teacup of resentment, realizing that holding on to hatred only burns our own hands. We also looked back at the image of the ancient banyan tree to learn how to let go of glories of the past, what we once were, to live completely with the person we are in the present. Dear Buddhists, according with conditions, mindfulness, or letting go, all those practice methods are very precious, but all of them cannot bloom and bear fruit if missing a fertile soil, a root energy source. That energy source is nothing else but love for oneself. The Buddha taught, in these three realms there is no one worthy for us to love and protect as much as ourselves. Be an island unto yourself. No one can practice for you, no one can suffer for you, and no one can bring peace to you except yourself. Therefore, after all, I only ask to advise dear Buddhists one simplest thing: learn to be gentle with yourself. When tired, allow yourself to rest. Don't blame yourself for being weak. When stumbling, allow yourself to make mistakes. Don't torment yourself forever. When worry rushes in, hug it like a mother hugging a crying child. Use the breath of mindfulness to comfort and console. Loving oneself is not selfishness, but is caring for the mind land so that from their seeds of compassion, of wisdom, of peace have enough conditions to sprout. When we truly know how to love ourselves, we will naturally know how to love people correctly. Human life only has one time to live, and time flows away like a horse passing a window, never returning. Don't waste your precious years in anxiety, regret, and resentment. Let's start right from today, right from this moment. No need to do anything huge, just need to start with a breath in truly deep to know that I am still alive, and a breath out truly light. To smile with that life. Every day spend for yourself a few quiet moments like that to listen to the voice from the heart, to return to the peaceful home of the mind, inherently there.